Hi everyone, how are you doing today? Sorry for the wait, I had a bit of a problem with my microphone. It decided to come apart at the last minute because I'm so professional like that. Thanks for joining in on the stream today. I thought this is kind of something that I wanted to do where I could kind of have a little more involvement with you guys. Obviously, most of this stuff kind of happens without you guys seeing, unless you're a Patreon. I've been working on a few things lately and I found them really inspired, and I felt like it would be a really good thing to start sort of sharing this with a slightly larger community while still kind of offering like the same kind of benefits that I have from the Patreons. And a really big kind of part of the Patreon is obviously like based around sort of songwriting and bits of production, and obviously we do like try and do like a fair amount of kind of educational content as well. And a big kind of emphasis obviously is, you know, me like anyone else. I'm always just trying to be better at what I'm doing, and I'm always looking for inspiration, and I'm always looking to try and improve and write better songs. And so kind of part of that is also sort of sharing my own issues and my own reasoning behind stuff. And so when I've been sort of, well, let me preface by saying obviously today's stream is based around the YouTuber and kind of Berlin experimental music extraordinaire Hainbach. If you haven't checked out his YouTube channel or his kind of music, the link is in the description below. And he kind of fairly famously is kind of tied to working with tape and kind of this sort of free-flowing way of working. And also, you know, in the same way that I kind of, you know, I have my, I was drawn to modular and electronic music in the first place, this kind of freedom and this kind of playing and blurring the lines, that he also kind of utilizes some test equipment, and he kind of sort of commandeers it into submission, I suppose, to create these amazing sort of soundscapes. And it's always been something in my own songwriting that has become really apparent to me recently, is that I am so structured, and I am always analyzing what I'm doing. I'm always analyzing music that I'm you know, participating in, and trying to see the bigger picture, and forever kind of trying to like coerce it into being something, whether that be a verse or a chorus, or okay, this bit sounds like a bridge, or what have you. And I'm always trying to kind of, like I say, kind of bottle everything and kind of straighten everything out. So upon kind of Hainbach's release of this new plugin, which is based on some test equipment that he has, I kind of saw it like a sort of perverse chance to kind of really seize this and use it as a way of instigating a more free-flowing sort of song structures, or kind of creating ideas in a much more, like I say, a much more freeing way, without kind of forever, even with my modular, I'm always sending it MIDI and sequencing it and programming it. And what I really enjoy about this plugin is that it is kind of to some degrees, you know, sort of untamable in a way. There is a kind of inputs within it, but there is a lack of control to some degree in the way that I would see control, as in being able to sequence it and kind of intervene in this kind of chaos. And it's also kind of based on, like I say, these building blocks. It is for kind of, it is essentially, sort of 8 sine wave, well, 8 sine waves are going into a mixer to some degree. And so, in a weird way, also with the simplicity of it, is also a challenge within itself to try and kind of, you almost have to be somewhat creative to find the sound, and then there's also this kind of wildness to it, and this kind of pureness to it as well, being that it is pure, these sort of pure sine waves that kind of can be distorted and sort of swirl around. So maybe enough of my gushing, and we're going to kind of start looking at this plugin. The kind of part of the reason for this also today was that I had started making some presets that I thought would be, and I've only made 5. I didn't want to set myself a mountain task, that I felt would help. And again, these are I've tried to apply these to very specific tasks within, the production that I do and the songwriting that I do, in a way of kind of having some of this chaos and also being able to kind of tame it to some degree, or at least kind of introduce some confines that would kind of shape it into being a lot more shapeable within a more conventional context. So without any further ado, if we go here, I've prepared this little session. Let me just kill this for a second. Boop. And so here we have the plugin. Let me bring this kind of front and center. So as you can see, and kind of like I mentioned before, up the top here you've got these 8 sine waves, and below obviously you can see the various frequencies, and you can move these around in any which way you see fit, from kind of 0 hertz all the way up to I think something like 15,000. So it is extremely powerful, and obviously being this kind of purity of tone, it is be careful with your ears as well. It can be very loud, and obviously these are very strong tones. So that's kind of one preface with that, is just to be a little bit careful with your ears, and maybe, like I say, if you're doing this for a long time, to work at a fairly low volume. I think Hainbach himself kind of recommends this. So you can see our 8 sort of sine waves here, and actually I can just reuse this and go back to our preset in a second. So this is my first little preset here, and this is actually the first thing I came across, really. I was playing for a small amount of time, and this just fell out, and I just sort of fell in love with it. I think on his channel, Hainbach has said, he's kind of likes making these things and then just leaving them to kind of fill the room, and I completely understand, that reasoning, because, like I say, it was just lovely to have on, and just it become this little environment the whole time. So we have, first of all, and it kind of maybe the kind of most basic explanation. Some of this is even beyond some of my understanding, but essentially, where you have these 8 sine waves that you can kind of configure in any which way you like and tune to whichever notes. Obviously, you may have to, as I have, get out my phone. Actually, let me just change the titles, because I am rubbish at remembering. So let's do this. And this makes it hopefully easier when you're watching later, that then you can kind of scroll through, and I'll put in the timestamps as well. So back here to our plugin. We've got our 8 sine waves here, and there is also a trigger which is now mini-mapped to C4, so you can turn it on and off. But I do like this idea that you can't interact with it in that way. It's just on or off kind of thing. And attached to that is an envelope, which you can kind of tame the curve and how long it takes for it, certainly mainly for the attack kind of to come in. On this first thing here, I would just imagine this like the faders of a mixer. So by triggering it, in it comes. I wish I'd left the default setting on here now, because I've got on this left side here, this is the automation, and I kind of don't want to get there yet, so let's pretend that doesn't exist. But on this right side here, you have these faders that, as you bring each one up, I'm going to start with the default here. That's better. Let's work with this for 1 second. So there we go, lovely. So now you can kind of see a little bit better. This is the default setting as you open it. And I've also, just remembered, I've got a little reverb on. So I can now go through and obviously I can create, you know, all kinds of dissonance with this. As long as these kind of beautiful, kind of organ-like, and the presets on here, I think Ben DivKid, he's done a few, and obviously Hainbach has done a few himself. So there are lots of kind of, I think this auto organ I seem to remember being really nice as well. Just these beautiful, powerful tones. But like I say, it's kind of so engineered towards this more experimental idea, that what I wanted to do was create some presets that you could essentially you know, introduce within a song context. So like I say, whereas we have these faders here, what we can do with this envelope here is then automate these faders. So like here you can see with the organ, when I trigger it, brings in those faders, and I can have that set, you know, in varying different envelopes. I can have it to cycle, I can do a few different things, and again that already starts to create this kind of movement. As far as kind of control within here as well, I can kind of boost, I can volume boost, and kind of drive the signal a little more. Oh, hi. Oh, I'm talking very kindly about you, sir. Close your ears. I can fine-tune these. I can control the panning in the same way. Again, I can kind of have that moving, and then there's kind of this cool little visualizer here. At the bottom here, and again, this is kind of where it's kind of, you can really take a leap. There are, for all intents and purposes, about 4 different types, let's say, maybe, of kind of LFO or modulation. And what you can do is there is one for gain, there's one for the frequency, there's one for panning, and there's one for the harmonic ratio. We're going to get to the harmonic ratio in a second. There's more coming. So with this gain, obviously I can start using this LFO, and there's many different, from kind of very conventional, like your triangles and saw waves and stuff like this, to these kind of a lot more dense math-based, let's say, maybe, and curve-based or object-based sort of LFOs. Very, you can go, you know, incredibly complex with them. But that's kind of what's interesting, I think, because when you are normally faced with kind of automation and a kind of plugin of this nature, usually there are hundreds, of different options. What's really interesting here is that you're essentially just automating the volumes and some of the frequencies and the panning of just these 8 sine waves. And on the basis of things, it kind of sounds like that would be simple, and maybe you would kind of you would hit a wall quite quickly. But I beg to differ. That's kind of what's cool about it, and it's also this kind of taming something that's fairly untamable and kind of unpredictable. And I think in a weird way there's a beauty in maybe not even understanding the entirety of it. I think that's kind of, that naivety is what is so good about it. It's kind of going in and trying stuff and learning along the way. So like I say, playing around with this, and this is kind of where I'm getting to with this stream, is that what I wanted to do was create some presets that could kind of essentially start introducing this chaos, this kind of beautiful chaos, into a more musical context, and kind of ways, or just at least a starting point that you can kind of take and then model to your own. So and kind of use, maybe I've tried to make 5 that I could come up with specific examples of this is how I would use this. Hainbach, yeah, it feels like learning hardcore math through feeling it in sound. Was blown away when Sinan added these. Yeah, I keep, so Sonic Lab, the company that Hainbach collaborated with on this, I upon purchasing this, I did look at some of their other stuff, and that's definitely next on the agenda. It's definitely very up my street. Like I say, I really enjoyed this, and like I say, this modulation matrix here, as you're going to hear, is really something special. Like I say, there's a kind of beautiful simplicity to it. Last thing on kind of the module itself, you can control it with MPE. So if you have like a Rolly or anything like that, or I know there's a Buchla version. There's also kind of 2 versions of the model. There's a vintage version that kind of distorts. Actually, let me go back to this guy. As you turn these up, you can hear that lovely distortion. And then there is a pure version, which is kind of a bit more pure sine wave. And then this kind of layout, there's a user set where you can essentially manually tune, or as I did, I kind of ended up getting out my phone and looking up all the frequencies and kind of dialing stuff in and dialing in scales, or kind of intervals that I was wanting. There's also this harmonic version where essentially you can, and obviously where the namesake would come from, you maybe kind of dial in a note that you want. So for example, I'm just remembering this off the top of my head. I think it's 198 is a G, from what I remember. Let me bring this down. Go back to vintage because it's way nicer. And essentially with this little slider here, I can now control the kind of intervals in a more of a ratio, and also this kind of, obviously as I go up, I get these kind of bigger spreads. So you can get these lovely dense chords, and I mean I still need to sit with this myself, but I find dialing in kind of usually even numbers can get you these really pleasing chords, which then obviously you can animate, and obviously then you can adjust these, you can dial it in yourself, and this, and then also at the same time you can also upload scales. So for example, if I wanted to introduce and kind of snap these or quantize these to a scale, then I can do that. So it's kind of, there is some there is some leniency in that way. Let's get on to these kind of presets. So let me just change my settings here. So let's dive into this guy. I'm just going to import these guys. Lovely. So this is the first thing. Oh, well, absolutely a pleasure to meet you, I suppose, Hainbach. And yeah, if you haven't, check out his channel. It is very inspiring. And like I say, it was it's kind of been like a dirty pleasure of mine to want to kind of use this to write. And at the end of the stream, I'll be doing a small kind of performance of just essentially this preset. It's what inspired me, and I just came up with the song really, really quickly, a little idea, and it ticked all the boxes that I kind of wanted from this plugin. So even at square one, I was very, very happy. Oh, it's nice to see so many of you in the chat. You're very, very kind, guys. And oh, the presets themselves are in the link in the description as well. It is amazing for drones. I'm going to get there, Ollie. I've got a drone preset. So to tie you in to what I'm into, I suppose, at the moment, is I have been really searching for a way to take and kind of control the melodic cloud, let's say, of a progression. For example, kind of have a direction or a chord progression, and what I've been trying to do is then subsequently then hide that chord progression. The idea being that I want to start blurring the lines. For me personally, when I'm, and the frustrations I'm finding with my songwriting, as everyone does, is this idea of, I find myself going and I do 4 chords and then I come up with a melody and then I move on to the next thing, etc., etc. And kind of certainly moving here to Iceland and meeting musicians here, I find, honestly, I found a lot of them have this wonderful sort of freedom to their songwriting, and certainly, obviously, there's a lot more, maybe a stronger classical background, I think, here, and it does create this sort of beautiful kind of experimental and kind of and more dynamic and changing way of writing songs. So this is kind of what I wanted coming into this plugin. This is the kind of thing that I wanted to get out of it. So I'm in the harmonic kind of setting. I tune this to a low G. Again, I was just looking on my phone for trying to find just a starting note. As you can see here, I've got my trigger, and this trigger is cyclical. So once it triggers and once it finishes, it will start again. So it's kind of continuously moving. As you'll see, and I realized that you can't see it, but now you can hopefully see it, that these, obviously these are the intervals that I've kind of brought forward. And I've kind of boosted some of them here. I haven't changed the tuning. I've messed around with the panning a little bit so that it's just kind of has this movement. And what I wanted to do is kind of just create this environment, this kind of melodic environment. And I think actually with one of my Patreons, who I kind of actually neglected to work out what other notes this had created. Obviously, I just used this ratio, this spread here. I set it to 1.5, and this is what I got, and I've kind of not messed with it. I think there is, for the most part, I think we were saying mainly in G major, but there is also, I seem to remember maybe a dominant 7 in there, I think, as well, and also a minor second as well. So some kind of interesting notes there. But that's kind of what's so great, is that with these modulations here at the bottom, you can continuously bring out different parts of these notes, and that's what I wanted to do with this preset, was to have a preset that kind of would let certain aspects of the notes sort of come to the surface at different times. And obviously there is a BPM to this. You can sync it to a BPM, and that is the only thing you're controlling there is the LFO, essentially, these LFOs here. So what I wanted to do was just create this kind of ever-moving kind of somewhat progression, and this is what I wrote a small piece to this that I'll perform at the end. Again, in my ode to Hainbach. I'm glad he's gone now. I can talk about him again. So this is it, and I'm just going to double check. I've got, okay, so I did put a little bit of reverb on it. That was all I put on. So this is the patch itself, he says. Let me know if you guys can hear this, okay? Let me give you... So, as you can see, our faders are lovingly dancing, and this little what is it, box, slider, whatever, at the bottom here, this is introducing a kind of randomness. So what's nice about that is not only are you kind of getting this sort of 4-second cycle, but then also a kind of a randomness. And again, you can now see that like each one of these is kind of reaching the surface or kind of its peak at different times. So, as is always the case with synths, I've got my little Valhalla room. I've just set the pre-delay to a 16th, I mean roughly 120, but that's kind of neither here nor yet. And then with a little bit of that, just in angel territory. This is literally the first thing that fell out. And yeah, I think it's just I literally had it on while I was working in the studio, putting up a picture frame, and just fantastic and swirling. And again, for me, this, as we'll hear, and I'll kind of show more of the example of this at the end of the stream. Within minutes, I had a melody, and what was great is that because it's just constantly swirling and moving, it's sort of suggesting different chords and different intervals. And again, for me then as a vocalist, I was making decisions that I wouldn't normally make, and so much so that the sort of nonsense that I was singing into my phone, I ended up trying to recreate almost perfectly. And again, so this is kind of all fairly lovingly in G. This could work as a drone. This could act as a breakdown, as a section, quite easily. And for me, this is, I actually ended up making, you know, the best part of a chord progression and a song. So this is my first preset. For those of you, obviously, without obviously any reverb is pretty good. But for example, I do use the supermassive reverb by Valhalla, which is completely free. I recommend that you do that as well. I think at the moment, and I think I'm right, this plugin is still €49. I think it is going to go up. Maybe the end of the next week, the end of this week. I'm going to double check that. I'm not entirely sure. But this is still on the introductory price. So if it's something you're interested in, I would do that now. But that, for example, the Valhalla Supermassive plugin is completely free and obviously by the Valhalla people, and it sounds amazing. certainly with something like this. I'm going to use it in a little bit. So let's go on to my, whoa, don't want to give it away. Hello, this one's a bit louder. So now I'm going to go on to my second preset. This one's called Major Chime. Something that I use a lot, and maybe I will, am I going to be really super professional? Let's, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Sorry about the first one. The first one's going to be called Preset. So this one's called Major Chime. Something that I do a lot within my songwriting is when I want to create a kind of texture or something, maybe, for example, a kind of challenge. I often sort of face when I'm, certainly because I'm introducing a lot of these textures within a kind of thickly layered production, whether it's kind of guitars or what have you, that generally leaves me with not many sort of free frequencies to play with. So something that I usually aim to do is that maybe for a later chorus, maybe a third chorus or the last chorus or the last section, what I will often look for is some high-end information, because usually that's kind of where there's still a little bit more space. And I will look for kind of within the scale of the piece, maybe a kind of select few notes that I can kind of just create this little sparkling little texture, and maybe I will kind of select the notes. We do this in Arcane Roots a lot. I do this in my production a lot, to kind of create this sort of confetti of kind of pleasing notes. Maybe I will kind of spend some time on the piano and kind of find some intervals that I think are really nice, or kind of group of notes that just maybe work really well over the whole chord progression. And the idea is that I can kind of create that to kind of just take that chorus to a new place. So I can kind of when it's there, you're getting these little pinging sort of high sort of chimes that are just, rather than trying to add something that's going to bring more distortion or kind of take up more the mids or the vocals or the drums or the bass. Usually at the end of the day, by the time you've added everything, you've only really got that space left. So what I wanted to do was create a patch that would kind of start that. All of these are based in G, by the way. So it's kind of, when you're looking at this, this is all relating to G. When you are taking these presets and want to use them for yourself, it's quite easy. You can tune these to different notes and keep the same relationships is kind of what I'm saying. So let's go to our plugin again. And so this is Major Chime. As you can see here, I have dialed all these notes in. Again, so this is what I've tried to do is more or less map out the G major scale here. But how I've done it is kind of it as a more of a chord. So I've got the root, third, fifth, major 7, 9, 11, 13, and a higher root, higher G. So this is it, there's nothing on. I'm using the envelope here, but what you can do, for example, is if you do want to, again, in an effort to start sort of taming some of this, is if you look up your tempo and, for example, see how many seconds are maybe a quarter note or something like this, or a whole note, then obviously you can apply this to the filter, and obviously when it's the envelope, and when it's looping, it will be in time. And same with these, by pressing this BPM button here, this will also be in time. As you can see here, this LFO here is just going cray cray, which is what I wanted. I wanted this kind of sparkling little texture. So here it is with no effects. Something interesting, and maybe you're thinking, oh, that's not very high. If you took it much high, cats start sort of looking at you funny, and dogs. So I've tried to keep it kind of nice. There's a couple of things I'm going to introduce into this that will take that a little step further. So what I've done here is I've automated this. So for example, as you can see, all of this little visualizer is really cool. But what I am doing is, where this is 2 seconds and it is in time, and obviously what it's wanting to do is obviously rise and fall every 2 seconds. What I wanted was this kind of glitchy little, I kind of wanted to get a tighter envelope basically. So what I did here with the gain mod is I introduced this super fast, and this is all positive, to the right is all positive, to the left is negative. I introduced this sort of super fast, sort of spluttery, like, well, this isn't quite an LFO, but this kind of maths, let's say. The plan is whereas this envelope, and maybe you can't hear me so well, whereas the envelope is trying to rise and fall every 2 seconds, and sure, there's a bit of randomness in there. What I've set this on the left side, this modulation, to do is essentially fight that in the opposite direction. So what I'm trying to do is then make it kind of essentially sort of feed it sort of a negative frequency. So as it's rising, it's kind of sort of being slapped back down again, and it kind of creates these kind of little glitchy little elements. I think I could actually take it further, actually, listening to it now. So whereas I've set this kind of bong. In fact, I could even maybe I'll resave my presets. So, sounds cool. As always, we go here. And let's start this way as something that I use in my production. Here is the Valhalla Supermassive. I believe this is just, I think I just even grabbed the preset splashy synth, which, as you'll hear now, that was the right button. I mean, I also use this in line as well to kind of just round off any of the kind of harshness, if there is any, and also kind of take out some of the low end. But like I was saying, that I wanted this kind of chimey stuff, and kind of cutting it up a little more. Something that I use often is the tremolator, or a tremolo of some kind. And what I want that to do is sort of act like a gate to some degree. And you can always kind of put in these kind of sort of random shapes, so that it's kind of becoming even bittier to some degrees. So bringing this in, it will now hopefully you'll get these. It will sound a little more percussive, and you get these kind of little ear candies. So. Kind of just dialed this in, and again it's kind of just triggering. You can kind of, you know, take just even kind of, you know, any old kind of rhythm here, kind of even at random, just kind of smooth it out. I'm just trying to create essentially another envelope to some degree, but kind of just gating. For example, you could, if you wanted to get a bit more out of this, certainly something you could use, for example, is the crystallizer, which is, again, to some degree what it's doing. If you wanted a bit more high end, do another octave. So I've got that just before the tremolator. Maybe I'll now I've got this kind of chimey. I can go up another octave. Again, just a small amount. Just adds that another little texture, and again, that's just something that's going to sit right on top. Again, this is fairly ambient. I could maybe make it more percussive if I wanted to cut through a little more. And you can also kind of choose the notes a bit better as well. For example, I have obviously kind of essentially chosen here like a major 13 chord. Obviously, you could go through here and tune this to a different chord, or kind of, like I say, take out a piano, find some notes that you'd like. For example, this is kind of the chord I've chosen. If I take these off, for example, I could quite easily dial in, for example, even if I just wanted to lose the kind of jazziness, maybe we'll keep a 9 in there. So again, kind of 1, 3, 5, major 7, 9, 11, 13, back to a root. So I can kind of do that. So now I've kind of essentially, again, this is all from the major scale. So if I do this, now I have a much more kind of basic chord. Again, I can bring in the tremolator, which sounds pretty cool without the reverb, to be fair. Could even back it down a bit. Panning's cool as well. Easily done. I mean, if anyone wants to steal these settings, I'll leave them up here, and you can. It's quite fun. I think it's something I'm looking to do next as well. Is maybe do. I think this was just a preset that I started with, which is on there. Obviously, the Sound Toys plugins here, they're, in my opinion, they're the best to some degree for like creative. And yeah, that Valhalla reverb is completely free, which has plenty of its own awesomeness. Okay, let's go into the third preset, Hotler. Let me change this. Ooh, sorry. Try and keep this easy for you to kind of scroll through after. Now this is kind of a continuation of where I got to with hello. This guy's a bit of a beast. So let's do that. This is what I wanted to get out of this, was to try and make a chord progression. And I kind of was going through the plugin trying to find a way of kind of creating a binary chord progression. It seemed like the most logical way to me. And being that you can kind of choose these different notes and obviously like accent them or bring some up and bring some down, and then obviously you've got this modulation side here. What I've done, as you can kind of see at the bottom here, is this is just a sine wave that's essentially very slow moving. I've actually taken it out of the BPM so I could get it even slower. And the idea is that if I had those faders boosting one chord, and then as the sine wave rotated, it then essentially brought out, as the sine wave continued into kind of a negative frequency, it would then bring forward another set of faders. So I could maybe try and then get like a binary chord progression. This is very much more in the kind of idea that I wanted to try and also use this to make songs. So for the most part, this is kind of just a G to an A chord. But what's great is that this beautiful kind of distortion that comes and drive that comes here means that this just has this kind of really brooding sense, and to some degree I think could probably go out after the first preset. So as you can see here, I've got this, what I've done is space the chords fairly evenly. So the first chord is 1, 3, 5, 7, and the second chord is 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? And you can see here, these higher ones were a little bit too high, but they're kind of nice there as a harmonic. So I kind of left them on a fairly small cycle. Nothing else is really being messed around with. Again, I've kind of boosted, again, the lower ones were more satisfying to boost. The higher ones, I just wanted to stop them from being a bit too harsh. But the kind of root notes here being this kind of this G and this A. So if I show you, this is it with no plugins. Again, I could use the BPM here to kind of make that timed, but I love the idea that I've kind of got this binary chord progression. There's nothing to say I couldn't have a few of these and kind of chain them. Like I say, the control that I have is this on-off. What's cool is if I introduce, kind of tame some of this low end, and I can use my EQ, for example, to try and accent different elements of the chord. So actually with a filter. So as you can hear, very this is it, kind of full back to some degree. And then obviously back here to my Valhalla room. Just tames it a bit. Reverb, and then you can hear like I can use this, and that's gonna just bring out some different notes. And technically the EQ is its own resonance. So the point being is that you could do and again, the idea is that I wanted to be able to use this to write, to kind of create a chord progression that I had to use my ears to follow, and to kind of break this idea. For example, I could maybe write an idea using this, and then I'm kind of tempoless. I'm kind of in this loving and shifting element. You know, you could do this with strings or with guitars and follow along, and it kind of just creates this infinitely more organic feel. Like I say, you could go to this BPM and, like I say, get this sine wave in time with what you're doing. But again, for me, this was just a really great way of like creating just a simple chord progression that could, like I say, shift and wane, and you could react to it. Kind of, like I say, it kind of writes itself. Okay, let's move on to this last one. I can't remember what it's called. Preset 4. Is it drone or is it dark set? One of them. Dark set. This is actually a little bit kind of a more of a suggestive preset. Can you keep one of the frequencies isolated from the sine wave LFO? So if it stays at one pitch while the others shift. No, I don't think so. I think you can, and there's this and the last patch. You can control the frequencies, but I think, for example, you can scale them. For example, you can kind of snap them to a scale or quantize them and load a scale in, like a major, minor, or pentatonic, or whatever. I think maybe if you're in the harmonic mode, you could have it so that the fundamental stayed the same, and I think you could do that. I think you could maybe make it then that the frequency shifts. For example, if I show you here, I think that when you are in the harmonic mode, so let's go for like this guy here, this would stay the same, and you could use this, this frequency or the ratio here to control all of the other frequencies. I seem to think there could be, out of interest, this is one of the presets, not one of mine. But as you can see, as far as I can tell, that the fundamental there is staying and the others are shifting. There's a scale on, which, I mean, sounds to me fairly pentatonic. That sounds when you turn it off. So you can create hell. That's not so hard. Like a few of these other ones here, I think are. So again, you've got this low note, and then the others are shifting around it. So yes, you could do it in that sense, but it would have to be the fundamental. Okay, hello. Let's look at this dark set. So the idea behind that was more in a way of adding interest. Let's say you've already got something. Let's say you've already got something established, and you are in a kind of production sense trying to add interest to it, whether it's a drum machine, or a drum loop, or just a general loop, or you've already kind of got your song in place and you're just looking for some final things. What I was looking at here, and this is kind of what dark set is, there's these lovely dense chords that you would kind of, can very easily get to with this harmonic ratio thing. I'm just hoping that that's come through and you can see it. Is that going to work? Maybe I think we're a little bit behind. Fantastic. So with this ratio, it's really easy to find these kind of really lovely little dense chord and harmonic relationships. Again, that's kind of really some of the charm, is that because everything is so flexibly tuned, it is then quite novel to have something that you can kind of just coerce to these incredibly tight chords, or assumed chords anyway. Whereas you could maybe come up with a dense chord, but I can't think, unless you bothered to do it, something where you could kind of take these sine waves and coerce all of the notes and tune them by hand. I mean, I suppose you could do that with a modular and that sort of thing, but to my knowledge, there's nothing particularly like that where you can kind of, like I say, coerce it as a frequency, again, to kind of assume these chords. Usually everything is still kind of fairly tuned or tempered. So this here was more a case of trying to get something in time. So for example here, I've got my my BPM, and again I've timed this, being that I know I'm in 120. I've got this 2-second thing. For example, if I show you guys the click a little bit, I hope you can hear this, that you should be able to then hear it in time. What you can also do, and as I've done here, I've just got this little loop, and it's just actually got the C4 note, so it's just triggering it on the 1. So it's just making sure that then you've got you're in time from the get-go. It's on-off. It's not momentary as well. So it's literally 1 for off, 1 for on, 1 for off. So I'm hoping this is going to work. So the idea being that if you had a drum beat or something like that, you could use this as a very kind of experimental way of adding a texture or adding a frequency or just something there that's going to kind of create more interest. Again, the novelty being that this is something really built on frequency rather than a chord, or something you could kind of make in that sense, and the idea that you could maybe come up with these cool little harmonics and interesting little kind of ear candy. So I'm hoping that when I press this, it's going to start. So being this 2 seconds here. Okay, I've got, there we go, sorry, I had a little delay on. So obviously I can, imagine a beat to this. I can obviously automate and bring, I can obviously kind of make this a little less rigid if I want, and kind of start using these. Oh, let's come around again. Let's leave it on. For example, I can start playing around with this modulation here and start getting, and again, I could tune this however which way I wanted. I can mess around with this, so I can change the harmonic spread and quite easily get, I'll turn this click off, it was more that you could hear that it would be in time. Again, this would be a great thing for beat making. Again, I can make something a bit higher. That's nice. And then to kind of bring it out a little bit, again, I've got a little EQ curve going on, just to kind of tame it a little bit. Maybe I don't want it to kind of sit on my drums too much. And again, I can kind of scrub through and bring out different frequencies. Where this really comes into its own is here I've got this sound hack, again, which is free. Maybe I'll link all this stuff in the description afterwards. It's from the same people who made the Morphogene. Tom Herb of the Herb Verb, sorry, I apologise. Again, I can now introduce this and maybe just start bringing out different frequencies. So. And then I can add a bit of delay. I've got just a delay on a bus here, Echo Boy Junior, just a space echo, quarter notes. easily find yourself, you know, again. I could even find a chord progression to some degree. Record a few of these, loop them, and I'm still kind of related to this fundamental frequency being in harmonic mode. Again, perfect for beat making or even just something interesting underneath what you're doing. And bringing us round to turn him off. Boop. Boop. This for me was kind of the initial plan for this for this plugin. Let me just switch this guy. Preset 5. Again, I just initially, when I was going to use this on a project, I initially saw it as, like I say, a drone maker. Now I realise there's much more that can be done with it. So, what I've done here, again, back in G, giving it away. Should have done this beforehand. What I've done here is try to kind of focus on, I'll make him quiet for a second. I've tried to focus on keeping it out of the way. Certainly with anything with a drone, for example, I pretty much exclusively use drones in all of my work. I just love them. I love them for adding movement. I love them for kind of bedding in a song and kind of creating an atmosphere. For me, it's the equivalent of, you know, the kind of watching a film like Blade Runner or watching, you know, a Hollywood film. For me, what's more interesting about films is the atmosphere and setting the scene, and I just feel like a drone is just the first thing you hear and the last thing you hear, and I think it's just, like I say, like creating a fertile bed for music. So what I've tried to do here is exemplify just a few of the other elements, and again, the idea is you can go so extreme with this stuff. What I wanted to look at was just kind of creating some kind of slightly more tame stuff that you could maybe use, or at least use as a starting point. So as you can see, I've tuned these to various Gs. I think there's a 5th and a 3rd in here. I need to learn my frequencies a bit better. But the idea is that I didn't want to keep this sort of distorted. I wanted to, as you can kind of see if I do this, I've tried to keep the volumes quite low. The idea being that I just wanted it to kind of like bubble and just kind of brood beneath the surface. And also then, with these all being kind of varying Gs of different octaves, this is where I've applied a very small amount of modulation to the frequencies. And just the idea is that I want to just focus on those frequencies kind of rubbing against one another. And that's how I kind of want to create this drone. So let me give you a taste. So this is it with nothing on. Might be a little quiet. Maybe more. Turn it up here now. So as you can kind of hear, I've just tried to keep this like a G major chord, but it's just shifting, just all the time, just gently bringing out different notes. And again, like this, there's just a slight bit of modulation on the frequency, and so they're just shifting ever so slightly, and I'm trying to bring out different and kind of just change this tuning ever so slightly. And again, that's just going to help it kind of rub against one another and modulate and kind of bring out these different elements. Again, to kind of exacerbate this again and again, kind of try and bring it into a realm where I can really use it for my production. Good old favourite, obviously easy win. I mean, what doesn't sound good through reverb? Again, it's just rounding it, starting to bring out different notes. Again, I'm using it to just tame some of the low end as well. And it's just kind of softening the whole thing. If I want to take some of those bits that are like poking out and kind of get a little more out of them, and maybe I'm looking for something to sort of be triggered by those little things that come through and kind of, again, accentuate them a little more, then I got my good friend the crystallizer, up an octave, very small amount. Even less maybe. Maybe even less than that. Just fills it out a little bit, maybe less on the recycle. Maybe I'll change this to a bigger note. It's just creating this little shifting tone. And being that it's on this kind of really slow, I put it on 15 seconds as an envelope. It's just bringing out different Gs, and there's, like I say, there's a little third in there as a little treat. Again, if you wanted to change this, you could do that. You could put this to a scale quite easily, change it to minor, obviously. Again, this is all in relation, so again, if you want to change the key of this, so you could just change all these Gs to Cs or whatever, you know, like and just maybe the best way of doing it, and just kind of do it by hand. Just keep in mind that obviously when you're doing it over a few octaves, it can get quite tense. So I always try and keep it in this kind of low mids for this sort of thing. Again, you know, maybe within the song, I'd maybe kind of end up sort of cutting or sculpting out a bit to try and just kind of not make it, you know, kind of dominate a bit too much. But it kind of writes itself, really. It's just this lovely little self-patching thing. So that is the last of my presets. Bring this guy down a bit. That are available in the link. It takes you a link to my Patreon, where I have made the link public, so anyone can grab that. I'm thinking of doing some kind of like a drone sample pack, I think, as well, of just a few textures maybe that I've made, just to kind of, for people who really kind of have no interest in that. But I'm thinking of doing something like this, again with these kind of different techniques, and if that's something, you know, people would be into, doing a little sample pack with a few little bits like this. Again, kind of based around songwriting and kind of using them, and kind of I'll maybe try and make them in a way that you could transpose them for different songs, and maybe that would kind of work out. So that was my little deep dive there. To finish the stream, I wanted to show you this first preset that I was playing with. So I am going to just open that up. And you have to give me a second to make sure this is all ready. Cool. Oh. So I've got a 4-day trial. I forgot about that. Yes, I should mention this. silly boy. Yes, there is a 4-day trial. You should absolutely do that. I forgot to mention that. So, I kind of can preface this a little bit. So this is based on, is the first preset I mentioned. Let me actually just change this as well. I don't know what this is called. I'm just going to call this live. It doesn't really have a. I think maybe this is called honest, but I'll tell you the spiel. So when I literally, the first thing I did, and again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, the first thing I was wanting to get out of this is a way of kind of trying to create and write music in a way that was a bit freer, and kind of less, gave me less control over it, so that I kind of had to, it was more about trying to make something interesting and kind of tempo-less or what have you, and then trying to apply a melody to it or a song to it, and kind of, I really wanted to use that as the kind of stimulus. So I've actually got here the original phone recording that I made, and within a few minutes of literally finding that patch, I got my phone out as I normally would and just started singing over it. And it wasn't until really the next day I was walking into the studio and I was listening to it, and I realised I was making a load of choices that I wouldn't normally make, and I wanted to kind of really protect that. I realised I was using lots of notes and structuring that I wouldn't normally do. I think I was just aiming to kind of see what notes felt right over it. And what I ended up doing, I actually then had to, and I may mess it up, actually try and get back to that idea, because I enjoyed it so much. So I'm happy to share. This is the kind of original, warts and all, the original phone recording. I'm just going to double check that's fine. All I've done here is just take out some of the, actually no, I've not done anything. So again, this is kind of literally me singing nonsense into my phone. And so, obviously, just nonsense, but that's the way I start a lot of songs, just gibberish singing. And I loved the intervals I ended up using, these kind of really nice jumps. And so what I ended up doing, literally upon kind of realising this and walking in, I kind of really quickly found some lyrics that I thought worked, and in the true homage to Hainbach and his method of creating, and this kind of desire to do something a little more freeing, I thought it would be really cool to kind of make it into this sort of poem and keep it that short. I just wanted to get the lyrics for exactly that phrase, and then work on it in a way that I felt kind of honoured the sentiment of what the plugin was about, and this approach. And again, and just in an effort to try something new, I'm really happy with how it's come out. What I wanted to do was attempt to layer it live and play the song live here. With my Patreons in part 1 of this, we kind of went through this and kind of prepared the song pretty much together. And again, the link to my Patreon is in the description below. This is the kind of stuff that we do, and I make little sample packs, and we kind of go through all this, a lot more. I also do lessons on kind of anything you'd like to do. Enough of that. Also then, kind of upon kind of getting inspired to do this, I also ended up arriving at the studio, and it was this kind of blustery day, and the seagulls were kind of sort of chattering above, and I was like, again, to kind of honour this approach, I thought I would record a little bit of Foley on my phone, just on my iPhone. So I kind of left that as a little audio treat for the ending of this. And again, I just wanted this to be a cute little thing. I was trying to, I will show you. I did want to truly, I did want to truly honour Hainbach. The lovely Sue Herbert gave me this to record our song Indigo with, and she very kindly gave it to me, and I really wanted to use it. I think what I'm going to do is record this, and then I think I'm going to then bounce it all to tape, and I think maybe within the Patreon, I think I'm going to try and maybe do a few more of these kinds of things and try and fill up the tape, and then maybe make it so that someone could win the tape just as a treat, I suppose. I kind of like the idea of it just being this one-time thing. It's the only thing there is, and so I'm thinking of doing that maybe over the next few kind of Patreon things, is trying to fill up this tape both sides, and just kind of have it be this little one-off thing, no other recordings of it, and then do that maybe for the Patreon. But I didn't get this set up in time, and I was a little bit worried about doing this bit, so I didn't want to run before I could walk, so I'm sorry, Hainbach. I will be doing it, I promise, next time. But I have it ready, and again, thanks very much to Sue. I'm super excited to use this. So, back to our song. Let me just get this set up. Double check I've got everything live. One thing I always do is tread on my cable, so I need to not do that. 1 second. I'm also, just so you know, for when I go to the live section, I'm going to mute the vocal on here. In fact, I could actually take it off, and that would be so much nicer. Let me just check I've got everything right, and you can hear it. And that's there. I need to double check the tuning on my guitar, but I think I'm good. And I've got this set up, and you're going to work, and you're on the right plugin. Let's just double check. And nothing. Fantastic. Great. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to triple check my stupidity. Cool. I'm going to give this a go. I'm just going to triple check that's everything that's coming through. A little bit noisy. Okay, my power's a little bit noisy there. It's fine. In fact, I can do this and then I can just activate it. Okay. Wish me the best of luck. I'm going to let this play out once it's done. So, in fact, actually, go back to here. So, thank you all so very much for checking out my stream. I'm going to kind of end it on this and let it all play out. Yeah, thanks for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I say, the link for the presets is below. And hopefully, I think I'm going to do some more maybe on kind of some presets that I've done for other. I'm going to make some other presets for some other plugins. And like I say, the idea being that I make all this stuff on the Patreon. So if that is something you're interested in and you want to do more of this, then that's there. And I do a live stream every week and kind of do some while I'm kind of working as well, like a song diary, and we do stuff for the guitar and production, and we do some collaborative streams where the Patreons kind of we do production together. So yeah, I hope you've all had a lovely evening. It's nice to thanks everyone for being in the chat, and I'm going to end on this little short piece, this little poem, I suppose. Yeah, thank you all so much. I'm going to sign out of this so I won't chat afterwards. So thank you so much and have a good night.